Hello and welcome to another edition of Empathy at the Table. I'm your host, Tony Anagor, and I'm a negotiation skills trainer, a coach, and also the founder of Emotionally Intelligent Negotiation, the framework. The framework of emotionally intelligent negotiation is built around three key pillars. The first is shifting how companies negotiate internally, how teams work with each other to ensure that their shifting priorities are put at the center in a collaborative way. Secondly, it's how to build long-lasting, sustainable relationships with trust at the base. And thirdly, it's focusing on how we deal with conflict. And all of this is through the lens of emotionally intelligent negotiation. And on my podcast, I aim to look for experts in their field who may not be household names, but they're working in this area. And it's where the rubber meets the road, where we talk about communication, where we talk about business, where we talk about negotiation in all its areas, focused through the lens of emotionally intelligent negotiation. And today I have somebody who I've admired for a very long time. His name is Dr. Sebastian Ross. Sebastian is the academic director of the School of Founders program at IESE Business School, which is one of the top business schools in the world for executive education. I happen to know him personally, and I've worked with him on this program for 3 years, coming into our fourth year now. Today is a conversation about the deep work. It's about what happens when leaders realize that they are the bottleneck to their companies, when they realize that they cannot scale the companies further than they've scaled themselves. And we do a deep dive into the program and how the program helps these leaders. So I'm really excited to jump into this conversation, and please join us on our next episode of Empathy at the Table. Hello and welcome to a very, very special edition of Empathy at the Table. You may recognize this face. Sebastian Ross was actually one of my very first guests. And actually this is my 50th episode of Empathy at the Table. And so I think we need to give everyone a cheer and welcome Sebastian for coming back and joining us once again on Empathy at the Table. Sebastian Ross, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Cool. Thank you, Tony. Wonderful to have such a wild audience. No, it's an honor to be back. Congratulations to what you've built with the 50th episode. So thank you for making me the guest of honor at this anniversary.
Thank you very much. So, Sebas, for again, some of the listeners who were really curious as to know why you're back here a second time, why you've come back. What is it that's so important about you and the work that you do that has invited me to want to bring you back and share your story? So, Sebas, what is it that you do, and who do you do it for?
That's a question that should go to you actually, but allow me to guess. No, I think a lot of this has to do with the work that we are jointly doing at the School of Founders, a project that is now 4 years old, which you have been an integral part of since the very beginning, and I know your passion for it, and we share that. We feel that we do an important work, meaningful work that has a big impact, and I understand that you would love for more people to know about it, to learn more about how we help founders create a better world through the educational programs that we run at IESE. That's at least what I suspect has something to do with that.
Yeah. Well, why don't you stop suspecting? And you know, one of the reasons I want you on this show is because I really want you to talk about the work that you do and what really, really matters. Because hands down, you're probably the most humble person I know in my circle. You do many great things. You influence many great people. And you do it in such a humble way, almost apologetic about the great successes that you surround yourself with and the projects you get involved with. So let's go back to maybe the origin story of Sebastian Ross. When did this kind of work, the work that you do in terms of looking at building people from the inside out and creating conscious leaders, when did this kind of work actually become really important to you?
It's an evolution. Lots of dots that I would to connect. I received a quite conventional business education. I studied business, a bachelor, a master, and a PhD, all in business administration in the 90s, and a strong believer in shareholder capitalism. That made a lot of kind of neoclassical economics made a lot of sense to me. But over those years, over almost, 25, 30 years of work experience, I discovered that doing business is exciting and I love it. I sometimes look at it as a game, although it's a serious game. But the purpose cannot be just making money. That doesn't make sense to me. And I discovered that part of this is a personal journey, a spiritual personal journey. I discovered Buddhism 25 years ago, and that inspired me and provided sense and purpose and logic and philosophy to the way I live my life, but without being religious, the basic ideas, and you find the same basic ideas in Christianity and Judaism and other religion. They have a role in business. I think business needs to exist for something else than making profit. Making profit is a condition. But beyond that, a business needs to serve a higher purpose, needs to be useful. It needs to be a good reason for this business to exist. And that's what I strongly believe in. And the work we do in the School of Founders with founders is one way of contributing to this, that this approach, this philosophy is more extended. The segment of startups and particularly scale-ups is hugely important in our economies, usually in net employment growth, net GDP growth, and all innovation comes from these small, fast-growing companies. These are the companies that really make a difference and change the world. So to have influence on them, on the way they're built, they're led, and make them more purpose-driven, is the way I found to contribute to a better world through business.
And you mentioned School of Founders, and obviously, I've been working with you on this project since inception, and I think it's a groundbreaking program. I absolutely love it, and I'm always appreciative every time I'm involved, or you give me a call, you ask my opinion or ideas on this. So I obviously truly value that connection. But I want to kind of understand for you, firstly explain for the maybe people who don't know what School of Founders is, what is the overarching principle and desire of School of Founders, and then we'll do a deeper dive into the profile of the people that actually come onto the program itself.
The School of Founders is a unit within executive education at the IESE Business School in Barcelona, but we also have campuses in Madrid and Munich and in Sao Paulo, New York. And it is an attempt to build something very specific for people, founders, who are in the process of really building companies. So we're less dedicated or not dedicated to the startup phase. So we try to be useful when companies come out of the startup phase and have all of a sudden dozens of employees and a few millions in revenues, and you really have something that has the potential to scale. This change is extremely difficult. Very few companies ever get to that point where we would admit them into our programs. You need to have at least 30 employees. as a data point. So just a single digit percentage of all those founders who tried ever make it to this point, and then even fewer evolve into something really significant, where all these dreams and hopes and these elevated purposes really have a major impact now, because they touch thousands or millions of customers and employees and all that. So this unit, the School of Founders, produces executive education programs for founders with this purpose. So we bring them to our campus. The majority of what we offer is presential. So you come together in a group of 30, 40 founders at our campuses for some days, and then we teach you and educate you in what it takes to scale a company. This has let's say a hard part where we discuss frameworks and strategies and tools and tips and tricks of how to do that in the different areas and functions of strategy and marketing and operations. But it also has a strong focus on the leadership piece. We consider that as essential for a company to scale. The leaders have to scale, and that requires work and dedication. And so we invest in that, because we also see that with these investments and being a more effective, productive and conscious leader, everything else becomes easier. All these challenges, these barriers of growth that you find, be it in raising capital, be it in defining an effective strategy, be it in building teams and building cultures, all this becomes easier. It will never be easy, but it will become easier if your leadership improves and is adequate to the size of the challenges, which increase exponentially. A company of 5 has nothing to do with a company of 50 or a company of 500 employees. It's a different beast, and you have to unlearn and relearn of how to be an effective leader in these circumstances. So that's what we do as of today. We have 2 programs running, Foundations of Scaling and Keep Scaling, and working on a 3rd one for larger companies. Yeah, I hope that answered your questions.
So somebody who signs up for the School of Founders, in their minds, what problem are you actually solving for them when they actually show up on day one?
The pain points that they are very aware of are usually tangible challenges, like raising the next round. No? How do I convince investors to give us another couple of millions to be able to fund our growth? How do I hire senior people? How do I become from a transition from a founder-led company to a company that is properly organized with a senior leadership team, senior people representing the different functions, regularly coming together, taking the best decisions? How do I enter new markets, be it new segments with new products or new geographies? No? These are big challenges. Usually the founders do this for the first time. We have a few serial entrepreneurs, but most of them try this for the first time. And if you've never done that, there are a lot of things you can do wrong. And then some of them, they already notice that they themselves might be a barrier to growth. No? They realize their limitation in the ability to communicate a coherent vision, to attract senior talent, to manage, coach, lead properly, motivate senior people, to establish a strong culture, where behavioral norms are clearly communicated and enforced. And so some already have a notion that something within them needs to change for the company to scale. They need to scale. But I would say most of our participants find this out in the process and see the value and the potential in this inner path. we call it the inner game versus the outer game. But then, as I said earlier, they're deeply connected. I think every gain in the inner game will translate into value and an easier path in the outer game.
And when we essentially, I would say that the School of Founders program is a startup in and of itself, right? Mm-hmm. You've found product market fit. We're now, I believe, in the fourth cohort now. We're recruiting for the fourth cohort. So obviously there is good product market fit. There is evidence that the work that we're doing is really making an impact. But for you, when you look over the three cohorts that you've had, can you share maybe some particular moments that you've had where you've had almost like a personal vindication that my beliefs are actually in line with the reality I'm experiencing?
What comes up for me is a particular moment during the graduation ceremony of the first year. A Saturday afternoon, we got together in a classroom to hand out certificates and pronounce a few words of honoring the journey we've made together. And I was the person who designed this afternoon, the agenda, who speaks when and what happens. Kind of in the middle of it, one of the participants, Carlos, he stood up and grabbed the microphone and announced the Entrepreneur of the Year award. And he gave an explanation, the criteria, and the thought process that got into this award that was given by the students, and then he announced me as the winner of this Entrepreneur of the Year award. Of course, this was a joke, but very much appreciated by me. I think it was a beautiful gesture of appreciation of those who went through the guinea pigs who went through that very very first year. And then, as a gift, they handed me a little booklet, like a moleskin booklet, where all the participants and even you guys, the coaches, wrote a dedication to me, some personal words of gratitude and feedback of how that experience was. And that was a very profound moment. I actually shed a lot of tears when I read that the next morning. I didn't get a chance to actually read it until the next day, and it was a beautiful confirmation that the work we do in this program is meaningful, because it touched people's hearts and it made them better humans, better leaders. That they took away. Also, they wrote about practical things that helped them. A Swedish guy spoke about a particular class. There was one class on pricing. Only that allowed him to make more profit in a month than he used to make in a year. So it wasn't all about the hard stuff, the emotional stuff. But that, I think what impacted me most is really what we almost surprisingly did in terms of transformation of these participants into better leader, better human beings. We opened some minds and some hearts, and that was the intention. But specifically in the first year, I was very positively surprised how big of an impact we already had, and it was documented black on white in this beautiful booklet.
Some people would say that IESE is one of the top business schools for executive education in the world. So it's an elite educational institution. And here you are talking about the heart and mind when it comes to leadership. Are you surprised at how welcome the idea has been amongst the participants and other stakeholders, or maybe has there been some hidden resistance that maybe hasn't made it to the surface?
I think our approach, our focus on this is very much in line with the original idea that is behind our school. I mean, the school was founded to develop leaders who then do good, have a positive impact on people, society, and the planet. And we're just another version of that. Our field of application is the world of entrepreneurship and founders, but the same is true for executives and more junior MBA students. And so in that respect, I think the School of Founders found a perfect home at IESE spiritually in terms of purpose. And IESE has been in this business ever since. Well, I'm not an expert. I've only been with IESE for 4 years, so I don't know the other programs very well. But what might be true is that we take this inner work to another level of depth, and I think that's worth it, because it needs dedication and deep work and intellectual, emotional honesty to really make progress. These transformations, they are hard work. They don't happen from reading books or looking at YouTube videos. So I think we're maybe breaking new ground in a certain way, but I'm absolutely convinced that this is what is needed. I also come from a very current angle. In the age of AI, knowledge is ubiquitous. I mean, it's a click away. I mean, there's an incredibly intelligent, I don't want to call it being, but machine, a click away. You can ask it any question. So teaching people just stuff is still required and useful for now at least. But the other part, to have the appropriate mindset, the appropriate motivation, the appropriate emotional intelligence to build companies that are really good for the world. I think that cannot yet be substituted by a machine. And if we want to do, I think, a value contribution to society, to the economies, almost naturally I would say that business schools will migrate to the softer part, because the hard stuff, the knowledge and skills becomes more and more of a commodity, where technology can substitute us as workers or substitute the traditional way of disseminating this knowledge in a classroom. But this inner work, the development work, I have difficulty seeing that how technology can really substitute that.
Yeah, I mean, I've often seen with leaders how they, it's easy to wrap your identity around a role that you perform in the company or the position you have within the company. And we always hear this term, the hard stuff versus the soft stuff. And recently I heard a beautiful line. I think it was Will Smith, of all people. He said that, I wish everybody could actually have everything they wanted, they desired. Every material desire was fed, because then they would realize that actually none of that makes you happy. What actually makes you happy is doing the hard work, going to those places that you don't want to go inside you, right? Focusing on those areas. The key to the door of the actual happiness you're looking sits right in the place where you don't want to go. And so that would naturally lend itself to enormous amounts of resistance, especially at leadership level. The higher up the totem pole you go, the more protective you are of that space that you don't want to go. So when knowing that, and you and I have discussed this in depth, and knowing that, what is a message that you could give to leaders who don't know that they don't know, but you feel they need to know? What's the message? Somebody listening to this who would be saying, well, that stuff doesn't work for me. I'd rather just lead from a logical standpoint and no emotions. How would you reach over the chasm to somebody who adopted that as a leadership style?
It's not easy. The teacher appears when the student is ready. So I think we require a certain openness, a certain base interest, a certain curiosity about that. No, if somebody's really closed and doesn't believe it, then it's very difficult to convince that person. No? So it's easier to have the door a little bit open and explore from there. But I think a very rational approach to this challenge of convincing somebody that this work is meaningful and effective, would be this mental exercise. Let's say you are the founder and leader of a company of 50 employees, and as we know, it's a hell of a journey. You lose sleep and sometimes even relationships and your health in the process. Building a company is extremely hard. And I could ask that leader, if I would take you out of that equation, take you out of that company as CEO, and would put in one of the leaders you respect most, and put that person in there, and you can name that person. Let's say somebody who's already built several companies successfully, and somebody you admire as a leader, as a person. Would things be easier if you would do that? And I think most would say, yeah, probably. And there's a little bit of a mental exercise, but some sort of proof that, and you would leave everything else, kind of what we say in academia, ceteris paribus, everything else would be the same. I would just exchange the leader, and I wouldn't even require that leader to have any industry experience of that, but just being a very advanced and capable, if you will, conscious leader. What would happen? I think most people would agree. The ride would probably be easier, and the chances of success will be higher. So there must be something to the thesis that leadership makes a big difference.
That's a really good point. Dan Priestley talks about this in his book Oversubscribed, and he talks about leaders having a life force, and when you have a life force, it's like an energy. It's an energy that can't be created or destroyed, but it can be divided. And that's how you can get leaders who can lead many people and who can lead many different operations, because they're not required to physically be there, but what's required is their life force, is that energy that they give to people. And I've been lucky enough to witness you as a leader and see how you've grown and lead the program. I'd like to do a bit of maybe self-reflection on you as a leader, and ask you, maybe let's start by asking, how would you describe your leadership style?
Could have advanced that question to have an answer prepared. I think very collaborative, I would say. I have a few strong convictions, very much related to the nature of this whole idea, the project, its purpose and some values. But then regarding the how, I think I'm quite flexible and leave people space to realize their own visions, their own ideas, their own values in the area that they run in the School of Founders. And you're one of them, Tony. I mean, you lead the Peer Council Initiative, and we've had both the experience in EO and kind of had a similar starting point. But from there, you take it, and with your learning, you develop, and hopefully you perceive me as a sparring partner, but not somebody who limits you or micromanages you. That's one thing. The other, I really, really value relationships and have a long-term view. So for me, people working with me, for me, if you will, it's nothing transactional. It's not that you do this for me today or this month and I pay you a salary. I want to understand people, feel alignment, feel their excitement, their passion for the project, and build a relationship that might work in this project, but also whatever comes next. And so I try to get to know the people I work with in their entirety, and their personal life as well. And this morning, yesterday was San Jordi, and it's a tradition here in Catalonia where you give either a rose or a book. So I think it's also internationally the day of the book, although I'm not exactly sure, but it definitely is here in Catalonia. And two ladies that work with me, Maria and Patricia, I wanted to give it today, but the book didn't arrive in time, so I wrote a little dedication to both of them, and I will give them this book this afternoon as a sign of appreciation of the great work they're doing. They're giving me so much discretionary effort, so much more than their job description and their hours that they're technically paid for would justify. They give their heart and their soul to this project, and I want to acknowledge them as human beings who decide to do that, and be grateful and honor them for what they do. So that's another aspect of my leadership. I don't know. I'll return the question to you. What do you observe? What's characteristic of my leadership?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you answered, and you kind of sidestepped, and then you passed the ball back to me on that one. But I was prepared. I was prepared for that because I've got the questions. So I was actually going to say that, if I imagine you, right, at school, being served school dinners, you are the person that would ask for extra pieces of humble pie at the end of the dinner. I just you seem to, when you talk, there is such healthy lashings and helpings of humble pie, humility about the way you speak and your presence, and as I talk to you now and listen to you, I wonder, is this something that has been naturally cultivated, number one? And number two, how do you keep that level of humility in the environment in which you're working?
I'm thinking of my family, my upbringing. My mother is extremely humble. She was working at home with a housewife, bringing up 4 children, which is already a handful. A very intelligent lady. She's 83 now. So that's definitely a role model of humbleness. I think my father was also quite humble, but much more extrovert, much more presence than I do. I have. So there's something there, and I think most of it actually comes from being motivated by something outside of me. I find a good reason to live, and a source of happiness to be useful to others, to serve in one way or another. I want to be useful. I want to be used up when I leave this world, thoroughly used up, and if you take this serious, this purpose drive, and this is a personal path and journey, but for an organization it's exactly the same, then I think it's very naturally that you take yourself back. I mean, it's an effort. I also have my ego, and I want to be loved and appreciated, and my moments of fame. But if I'm serious about...
Is that you?
No.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
If I think hard about what makes sense, it always brings me back to what do the people I serve, and this could be an employee, but it could be a customer, it could be another stakeholder, just be useful to somebody else. That's what makes sense, what brings me happiness, and every time when I deviate from that, it's kind of it's shallow. It might feel good for a moment, but it's not substantial. It doesn't bring me what I'm actually looking for, and I don't think essentially it even doesn't give me what I would like from other people. I mean, this feedback from you, that's meaningful. I really appreciate that. I'm grateful for that. You know, your admiration for, I don't know, whatever great things I might be doing is less important for me.
And you mentioned feedback. And obviously, this is one of the key levers of growth when it comes to feedback. Can you maybe expand, when we look at the School of Founders program, how big of a role does feedback, peer-to-peer feedback, play for the actual participants? Somebody who's a leader, who's normally used to actually telling people what to do, him or her listening to feedback might be a bit foreign. Could you maybe expand and share a little bit about how you create the space for that to happen?
Yes. I mean, the peer-to-peer component of what we do is huge. I sometimes say maybe 50% of the value that we generate through these programs is already done just by putting founders in a similar moment of life in the development of their companies into the same room and make them share, make them speak honestly about what's going on, and support each other. So the peer-to-peer element is huge. We don't always need to have put a guru in front of the 30 that teaches them something. There's so much value in just bringing these people together. On average, they're 40 years old already, you know, so it's seasoned executives and leaders. And then we have several, let's say, mechanisms and tools to create that self-awareness, you know, and sometimes even explicit feedback. One thing which is very impactful, which I'm a strong believer in, we put them through a 360 leadership assessment at the very beginning of the program. In the first sprint, we explain the methodology, and then the actual survey goes out between the first sprint and the second, so between October and the end of November. They'll receive feedback from 15 on average, 15 stakeholders, you know, their board members, their colleagues, their direct reports, sometimes even their spouses. And it's a very sophisticated and very insightful tool. It's called the Leadership Circle Profile, which paints a very nuanced picture of how others perceive your leadership. There's let's say a standardized series of metrics that measure your competencies in certain areas, and what we call reactive tendencies. But then there are also written comments which and both are really, really impactful, life-changing a lot of times, I would say. And also the insight that for many founders, it's the first time they get this type of feedback. And then we also put them into smaller groups, what we call peer councils. In every one of the 6 residential sprints that the Foundations of Scaling program consists of, an entire afternoon, the participants, the founders, spend in small facilitated groups, facilitated by excellent, brilliant coaches like you, Tony. And there they don't give each other explicit feedback, but they do share their experiences. And it's a lot of times, I think the experience is like a mirror is being held up. So first you hear yourself speak, and then see others' reaction to it, and sometimes we even have room for explicit feedback and some sort of advice. So I think it's another very powerful tool of finding references, and being able to position what happens to you, your experience, your challenges, with regards to other people's experience. So learning about others, so others handle certain situations, is also an indirect way of finding feedback. So I think it's a big part, and in general, self-awareness for this inner path is really an absolutely necessary first step. You need to look inside. You need to quiet your mind and understand what's going on up there, and create awareness around it to be able to manage it. And feedback is one way of creating that self-awareness.
Yeah, thanks for that. I read a statement, but I think Pascal said that the greatest danger of humanity is man's inability to sit in a room on his own, right? With his own thoughts. And I remember growing up, I was actually on the other side, right? I grew up, in London, in a city, and I didn't really communicate very well. I wasn't comfortable using words.
Hard to imagine. Yeah. You came a long way, my friend.
It was just, I just remember things being kind of tough, right? Tough, and what was respected there was toughness, your ability to be able to handle yourself, with your size, with your fists, and that kind of stuff. And then I took that into work, right? I remember I took the same attitude into work because, I would walk in and I would feel the need to impose myself just because that's how I'd been brought up. But at some point, I felt it felt alien to me. There was a cost. There was always a cost. I remember you and I once we met, and you made this interesting observation. You said, I always notice that you're looking at other people and you're sizing them up as a threat. Other men, you sizing them up as if they're a threat. And I said that's one of my vestiges from my youth. And so now, obviously, I 100% believe that for long-term, sustainable, purpose-driven lives, you've got to do that hard work. You've got to go to those places that you don't want to go. And we always say it's the individual work that you have to do together. You can't do alone. But what if we're wrong, Sebastian? What if we're wrong? What if actually the ruling paradigm is the only paradigm, right? When we look back in history, the people that have succeeded have been the victors, the people who've shown power. And what if that's not really going to change?
I honestly don't think so. What I observe in human history over these 300,000 years since the first version of us came out of northern Africa, there's an evolution in consciousness. What I mean by that is, it's a big word, but I think one way to explain it is to describe it as a type of awareness about your reality, everything around you, and particularly the impact that your words and action, and maybe even your thoughts have on everybody else. And there's a clear evolution. Human beings behave nowadays very differently from those hundreds of years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago, and even thousands of years ago. So we become more and more considerate among each other, and we tend to kill ourselves less, and we tend to insult ourselves less, and treat ourselves better and better over time. There have been ups and downs, and there are regressions. There are big wars that don't appear as everything but progress. But the underlying trend, I think, is a crescendo towards understanding better our reality, having a better comprehension of cause and effect. So what really my thoughts, my action, what impact of me as an individual or our organization has on everybody else and the planet. And I don't think our generation or the following ones will cut off that trend. Like I said, there are ups and downs, and we need another paradigm shift in the way we think about the world, and the way we lead, and the way we look at businesses and the purpose of businesses and our relationship to this planet and nature. And I think it's shifting. I feel we're in a liminal space where a lot of things are obviously not working for many people, and they vote accordingly. A lot of times driven out of fears and wanting to protect the status quo. So a lot of what is happening in the world seems like a regression, and it might be, but I think out of all that turmoil, and hopefully the least amount of violence possible, will emerge an even more complete version of the human being in a way of leading societies. I don't know if I'll still be around, but I'm absolutely positive that this will happen. And then that version of the human being and the societies will approach some sort of limitation, and another evolutionary step needs to happen, and it will again be painful. It happened at the individual level, it happened at the level of organizations, but even at the level of countries and the world, we need to be slapped in the face to wake up and see what's really needed, and take the hard decisions to make these changes.
Yeah, we need to be prepared to plant the seeds of trees under whose shade we will probably never ever sit. But it's that attitude, and I definitely know from the more I dig into this work, and the more I engage with people, especially around my area, which is emotionally intelligent negotiation. I'm finding I'm having much deeper conversations. I spoke to somebody last week who said something. When we were looking at the evolution of negotiation, and he said, "Don't you get it? We negotiate every single day. We are the only species that can sit together on a bus and not know the person next to you and feel comfortable. No other animal would ever sit, next to any other animal in such close proximity. Think about how we're walking past each other, and that's a negotiation on some level or another, where you've weighed somebody up and you've recognized them not to be a threat, and you've acted accordingly. And I think when you kind of think about it in those terms, you zoom out. I think it makes our work so much more purpose-driven, right? And so that gives it so much more meaning. And of course, the more and more you talk about it, the more you meet people who have similar beliefs, like ourselves. And I've been surprised at how many people have almost kind of come out of the woodwork and said, "Yeah, I actually believe that to be true as well." And I know you, in your circle, you are cultivating and building a very impressive circle of people around you who, on the outside, one would have thought, maybe wouldn't have really believed in this way of thinking. Have you been surprised at the kind of support that you've received from some areas versus maybe the lack of support you've received from other areas?
Yeah, to the degree I already mentioned earlier that I acknowledge that most of the founders that come study with us, they don't necessarily look for that. That's at least not the most, their inner growth is not the most present and painful pain point, if you will, that they experience. No, they come more for the tangible stuff, and that they then they're pleasantly surprised to discover this world, to discover things about themselves, and that process of transformation. And so on the student side, they are surprised, and I'm, let's say, less and less surprised because I have seen it work. And on the faculty side, my experience is that these people that we bring into the program, our own academics, they're used to all sorts of audiences, but they somehow appreciate that there's something peculiar about this group and our approach. There's humanity to it, or as our common friend Jerry Colonna said, there's a morality to it that he very much appreciated, that makes him come back and again and again, and support us so generously with his time and his contacts. And so this is very encouraging also for me to be more open and courageous also in these messages. Probably what we've discussed in the last half hour, 45 minutes. I might have been more hesitant to express that 3 years ago when we started, but I see how everybody, not everybody, but most people really respond to it very positively, and it kind of makes sense. Maybe we're all human beings and we all want to be loved and cared for, and we know what's really important, then we get it confused, and then we pursue shiny objects and big cars, big houses, big jobs, but we somehow deep down we all know what is essential and where true happiness comes from, and that comes from making an impact and have healthy relationships and with other human beings who appreciate and love each other. And you just need to be reminded of that, and the work we do together. Yeah, it's beautiful because we're not we're less and less hesitant to be open about it and be straightforward and promote that.
I like that.
This conversation.
We're less hesitant to be open about it. I think that's the overarching sense that I'm feeling, about talking about this stuff. I mean, as I said, this podcast is a testimony to that, right? Yeah. I probably maybe 5 years ago, 3 years ago, would never have dreamt of having a podcast where I talk about these kind of issues. And I also talk to people who completely disagree, but I'm prepared to have a look at the other side as well. And you almost like take an Occam's razor to the situation and boil it down to what you've just said, right? We actually, all of us, we kind of know essentially what's the right thing, but we just need to be reminded. That's beautiful. We're in our fourth. We're recruiting for the fourth edition, the fourth cohort of School of Founders now. Did you ever think you'd get here?
Yeah. I mean, it was a startup, but I wouldn't have started it without the perspective of really creating something cool. I don't think I imagine at that point what it looks like and feel like, in particularly. But I did set out to have an impact and make this a success story, and we're still at the very, very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about, I mean, the whole program. Obviously, everyone you speak to, they always mention your name, right? It's got your life energy to it, and then you manage to ignite that flame in other people who already have a capacity for that, or have their own kind of energies burning, and then you bring people together and have them to create some amazing things. And you also have this ability just to come up with ideas that at that moment sound crazy, but then they happen. And one of those ideas is the conference that's coming up in June. Can you talk a little bit about that, the Founders Conference that's coming up in June, how the idea came, and what is it that you're looking to achieve as a result of it?
One of the reason we do this work is to build a community, because founders, like we already said, it's a very, very hard and difficult job, and most of them they're always surrounded by people, but a lot of times they're quite lonely. There are not too many people that really understand them, get them, able to grasp what it means to go to bed every night with all these concerns and worries, and the responsibility of making payroll next week for 50 people. It's a hell of a job, and but we learned how valuable it is to just bring these people together and share openly their thoughts and find understanding, comprehension on the other side. They can finish each other's sentences, because they're very different industries, come from very different companies, but what it feels like, the psychology of being an entrepreneur is quite universal, and to discover that is very valuable. So the idea of community has always been part since the very beginning of this project. So it's not only about disseminating knowledge, but also bringing together people and make them grow together as a community and support them and help them also in practical ways, not only in in emotional ways. And a way to live that and bring together people across also the different cohorts is to have an event where we can actually have them physically all together. And we need a little bit of critical mass to justify such an event. We now have over 90 founders who went through our program, and we're bringing them together in Barcelona on the 3rd and 4th of June for a day and a half of a conference. Although it's a particular type of conference, it's actually embedded in 2 sprints. So the Keep Scaling program is in town the beginning of the week, and the Foundation of Scaling program, they have their last sprint at the end of the week. And in the middle, with these people already in town, then we positioned a community event where they come together. So the ones who already study with us come together or have studied with us, and but then we open ourselves up also to founders who could potentially be part of that community and could study with us at some point in the future, but also faculty and friends and family and you coaches and IESE colleagues who are connected to the program. So we'll expect about 250 people in the South Campus of Barcelona for a day and a half of a beautiful journey. Again, a lot of focus on the inner work. We have really rock star speakers, but also bring our own alumni on stage. It will be very interactive. You'll be continuously exchanging ideas in sometimes even an intimate format with these rock star speakers, but also the founders among themselves. Lots of time for reflection, for journaling, for meditation. So it won't be a day and a half where people speak at you. You as a participant, you will be a protagonist in a certain way, and hopefully you take home a lot of tangible business knowledge, insights about you as a leader and what's important in your life, and hopefully a lot of new relationships also, and new friends.
Fantastic. And when is that coming up for our listeners?
It's the 3rd and 4th. So we start, I think, at 2:30 in the afternoon on June 3rd, and we'll go until the end of June 4th, the Wednesday. Actually end with an open air concert. Longer story where that comes from, but we even have music.
Yeah. For those people who are watching this 10 years into the future, we're talking about June 2025, right? That's this year.
Thank you.
long after, Sebastian and I have moved on. We hope that there are still people who are gaining inspiration from this conversation. Sebastian, I wanted to, as we come to the end, I wanted to talk to you about something that seems to me to be very intentional about you within this program. And, I often see studies when I go to, business schools or listening to talks. I often see studies where they put stats up about Europe, Asia, and America. And you see that. And I've noticed Africa is often missed off the map when it comes to doing, looking at stats. I mean, it's becoming much more, it's moving much more into the mainstream. But I think you've been very intentional about building, intentional bridges with Africa. Would you share your perspective, your insight about the School of Founders and the African initiative that you have?
Yeah, I share your assessment regarding the role and the attention that Africa gets, but I also anticipate an enormous and I believe very positive development that this continent will undergo in the next decades. I mean, it's by far the youngest population, and I think it will be eventually the most populous continent also, and development is happening at great speed. There are of course enormous difficulties also, but I would make a bet on Africa. And I've been, let's say, watching Africa for some time. So when we started the School of Founders, I wanted to make a conscious effort to kind of integrate that. Because of the nature of the program, it's more of a European focused program, because you need to travel during 9 months 6 times to a European city, Barcelona, Madrid or Munich. But we have caught the attention also from African founders who we sort of went looking for, also nowadays find us, and it's a little further away, but they're happy to take a plane and come to us and join these European focused communities. And I love the diversity of perspectives, cultural backgrounds, business experiences that we really receive from that. And I find it extremely enriching. And so we've given in the past, and we continue to give scholarships for African female entrepreneurs, because a lot of times there is successful, very sizable companies, but the purchasing power in these countries sometimes makes it difficult for them to allow themselves the fees of a European business school. So we try to help with that. And we actually, as part of the Keep Scaling program, which we haven't really talked about, which is for those who graduate from Foundations of Scaling, we offer them a continuous learning program for another 3 years, less intensive. It's 3 events that they can continue to be part of the community and keep learning. One of the 3 elements in this year-long experience that we offer in the Keep Scaling is what we call a study tour. So we go to an ecosystem, a startup ecosystem, and to try to learn what's particular about the way of doing business, building businesses at a certain location. In March we went to Stockholm and had a look of how the Nordics in general build businesses, but also live lives and run and manage their societies. And in February next year, we will do that in Lagos, Nigeria, your second home. And I'm really, really excited about it, to take whatever, how many we are, maybe 30, 40 entrepreneurs, to spend 3-4 days in Lagos and understand the African way of life, the African way of doing business, and hopefully build friendships and business contacts while we're there.
Sebastian, I could definitely go on forever on this call. This is really kind of my sweet spot. We're talking about where the rubber meets the road, where purpose does meet profit, because ultimately it's not. This is something that we're doing because we believe in it, and I think it's important to show that by putting purpose in the center, profits become much more sustainable in the long term. For people who are listening, what is it that they can do to help, to reach out to you, and how can people find you if they want to understand more about you as a person and the project of School of Founders?
Yeah, we have a website. If you go to iese.edu/sof, that's our homepage of our section, the School of Founders, where we describe the project, and from there you can dive into the different websites that describe our project. Personally, Sebastian Ross at LinkedIn. Would love to connect to more people, and if you're an entrepreneur yourself, in the range where we're looking for kind of between 30 and 300 employees, and ambition to grow, wanting to build a purpose-driven business in the community of other international founders with top-notch speakers and thought leaders, then you're more than welcome to reach out, and I'll be happy to attend you and explain in more detail what we do. And if you're not an entrepreneur yourself, you might know somebody. If you are a great teacher who thinks that you can teach something to our entrepreneurs, also very happy to connect and learn more about you. Yeah, I think that's it.
So we've come to the official end, but I've got a bonus track that and I didn't tell you about this, but so I'm going to put you on the spot. But it's a bonus track that I want to offer to our listeners, and I'd like to imagine that we, in 10 years' time, we're at the Founders Forum conference. In 10 years' time, and it's huge. You fill the football stadium full of leaders and potential leaders of companies. Companies have scaled up already, and they're making a real impact. And I'm there as the MC, and I say, ladies and gentlemen, 10 years ago, this was a dream in the mind of one man, to share his words of wisdom, to give a message. A headline message to the captains of industry. I'd like to welcome on stage Sebastian Ross. Your speech, what do you say to them? Sebastian Ross, everybody. And as the crowd dies down, what's your message?
Life is about serving. That's what gives meaning to life, and there's no better opportunity to be useful, to serve and live a meaningful life than when you sink into your deathbed one day, you look back and say, this was worth it, than building a company. A company with eventually, hopefully, thousands of stakeholders gives you countless opportunities to contribute to somebody, make somebody's life better, be it employees, be it customers, be it other stakeholders, protecting or maybe even regenerating the planet. And I invite you to make good use of that of that opportunity. There are no better ones. It's wicked hard, and every day there are problems that seem impossible to solve, but with persistent and a strong sense of purpose, overcoming it is worth it. You will grow in the process. There's no better opportunity if you want to grow as a person to be a leader of a scale up or even larger companies. Opportunities for growth in every conversation and every email. So embrace it, own the responsibility, and do great work with your companies and make the world a better place. That's what I would say.
Thank you very, very much, Sebastian Ross. I'm proud, so proud to be able to call you a friend, but even more proud to be able to call you a brother. Thank you very much for joining us on Empathy at the Table.
Thank you very much, brother. It was wonderful to chat with you. I relish these exchanges, usually in a private one-to-one forum, but why not make our conversations public? Maybe they're useful. Hopefully they're useful to somebody.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.